Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational Humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome. We celebrate Darwin Day every year here at First Unitarian Society in February, which is his birthday month. One bit of trivia is that Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the same day in the same year, 1809. Of all the people we could be celebrating, why is it Charles Darwin? Well, for one thing, just before its founding in 1881 as a Unitarian congregation, the people who founded FUS were reading the works of Charles Darwin. Because, as freethinkers and proto-humanists, the founders of FUS realized that Darwin's insights concerning natural selection had fundamentally changed the human understanding of ourselves forever. For those willing to accept the science of natural selection, a new human reality had been born, one that offered at once the heady opportunity to reimagine ethics and society, and one that also offered humility as we began to understand that we are animals among animals, animals that will most likely never understand our reality except in partial and fragmentary ways. The 19th century readers of Darwin got a lot of things wrong, as would the readers in the 20th and the 21st centuries. Yes, Darwin was a person of his time. He was racist, sexist, elitist, and yes, Darwin's theories have been misapplied and misused. Yet the fundamental insight that all of nature, including human beings, is interconnected and interdependent, that message is more important now than ever. If anything saves Homo sapiens from itself, that's the insight that will do it. Our theme for the month of February is widening the circle. And Darwin's dangerous idea widens the circle all the way out. Everything with DNA is one flesh. The publication of Darwin's Origin of Species in 1859 turned both the scientific and theological worlds upside down, at least for traditional Christians. At last, the theory had bridged the gulf between the material world and the world of spirit or consciousness. Anyone inclined to think it through understood the implication of natural selection for the place of the human in the grand scheme of things. The conclusion had to be that the scheme is grand, but human beings are not grand to the scheme. Even though this is the almost inevitable conclusion based on Origin of Species, many wanted Darwin to say it explicitly. And in 1871, Darwin published his book, The Descent of Man. In that book, Darwin says it explicitly, quote, "The difference in mind between man and the higher animals, great as it is, certainly is one of degree and not of kind," end quote. It's important to notice what Darwin was saying there. The difference between human intelligence and the intelligence of other animals is one of degree. We have the same sort of intelligence, the same sort of consciousness as all other animals. Consciousness is a continuum. This would not have come as a surprise realization to those who lived before Christianity or who live outside of its influence. Many earth-centered traditions see the earth not as a static, unchanging thing, but as a continuous process. The earth is alive. All living things are conscious and connected. Native Americans, for instance, tended to consider all animals, including themselves, as siblings, the two-leggeds and the four-leggeds, as the phrasing went. The Stoic philosopher and so-called pagan Marcus Aurelius wrote, quote, "Always keep in mind the nature of the universe and the nature of your own nature, and how the one relates to the other, and what being a part of the entire universe means. Remember that no one can stop you from doing and saying those things which are your part in the universe, end quote. The nature of the universe and the nature of your own nature. Previous to monotheism, most human beings saw the reality in that way. But those affected by monotheism have had a difficult time getting back to that understanding. It's a realization in the poem by the contemporary American poet Margaret Atwood called All Bread. A little bit of it goes like this. All bread is made of wood, cow dung, packed brown moss, the bodies of dead animals, the teeth and backbones, what is left after the ravens. This dirt flows through the stems and into the grain and into our arms. Lift these ashes into your mouth, your blood. To know what you devour is to consecrate it, almost. All bread must be broken so that it can be shared. Together we eat this earth. End quote. This ancient wisdom had been mostly suppressed by European Christianity, though the idea stayed alive among intellectuals and practitioners of folk religions. For example, Spinoza wrote about natura naturans, nature naturing. Nature naturing. Nature for Spinoza was everything, self-arising, self-perpetuating. Darwin's theory of natural selection demonstrated how nature went about doing that naturing. But Darwin's theory went beyond merely explaining how living things got here. It also explained how instincts are shaped by interactions with our environment. Darwin wrote, quote, "The social instincts lead an animal to take pleasure in the society of its fellows, to feel a certain amount of sympathy with them, and to perform various services for them," end quote. The implications of that sentence are profound. For example, Dr. Michael Tomasello, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Duke University, in his recent book, A Natural History of Human Morality, brings this insight to human ethics, postulating that first we human beings learned to cooperate, then we created morality based on that cooperation. Dr. Tomasello writes, quote, "It is inconceivable that you would ever see two chimpanzees carrying a log together," end quote. The human ability to cooperate in shared intentionality, as he calls it, is what makes us different. Not brain size, not walking upright, not being descended from or created by a god. Rather, our ability to cooperate when foraging and hunting created the morality of the group, and then the social norms of the group. These social norms, Tomasello writes, have often been declared the will of the gods. Collaborative behavior leads to social organization and to ethical norms, and eventually to complex moral codes that many people attribute to one god or another. As Darwin wrote, quote, "A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others," end quote. According to Darwin's idea, we are all moral beings because we are capable of reflecting on our past actions and their motives, and drawing conclusions from that reflection. History too often gets told very badly. One consequence of that is that we tend to know so few instances of individuals making a difference, and that can lead to us feeling powerless to affect the future. But that is an illusion created by the wrong way of telling history. There are notable exceptions, but those are marginalized as alternative histories. Now think about a short history lesson concerning the Great Depression and the New Deal. No doubt it would mention Franklin Roosevelt, who was president, right? Maybe a couple of the cabinet secretaries along the way. But what about those millions of voters who voted for that? What about the thousands of federal employees who actually made the New Deal work? Not to mention the thousands of activists out on strike and out on the street pushing for the progressive change that the New Deal partially embraced. The way history is taught communicates the idea that only great and famous people move history, and that just isn't the case. Just as we human beings are naturing, as Spinoza put it, we are also historying. All of us are part of an oscillating loop creating the human reality at every moment. Charles Darwin and his theory of natural selection is a good example of this. Many people know Darwin's name and what he did, and a long list of predecessors, maybe, other people who had been thinking about evolution over time, but consider a group called the Aborigines Protection Society. It later joined the Anti-Slavery Society, which still exists today. The Aborigines Protection Society was a group formed in 1837 to protect the rights of native peoples from the horrors of European colonization. They were a religiously motivated group that used as their motto the Latin phrase ab uno sanguine, of one blood. Now that phrase occurs in Christian scripture. It's in the book of Acts. It says, God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that the Lord of heaven and earth dwelleth not in temples made of hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on the face of this earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. Of one blood. Now, why is this passage important? Because for the people of the Aborigines Protection Society, it meant that all of humanity was descended from Adam and Eve, which meant, in their minds, that all people had equal human rights, period. Therefore, slavery was clearly wrong. Damaging other cultures was clearly wrong. Colonizing the planet was clearly wrong. Now, that sounds like a no-brainer to many of us today, but it wasn't so clear in Darwin's time. It was a minority opinion. The theory that all of humanity came from common ancestors is known as monogenism. And I can't say it too fast because I get confused. Monogenism. In the 1830s, that was a position of some radical Christians and people belonging to things like the Aborigines Protection Society. Now, many scientists of the time were polygynists, meaning they thought that human beings came from different forebears and were therefore different species. This was the underpinning for some very ugly, dangerous theories concerning race, and it bolstered the prejudice that there are superior and inferior races. I should mention that there are still polygynists out there today, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But in Darwin's time, that belief was widespread. So, where did Darwin get his conviction that all of life evolved from one common ancestor? Yes, his theory points in that direction, but how was it that Darwin, in opposition to all the science of his time, was prepared to pursue the direction of a common ancestor for all living things? Might have been the influence of his wife, Emma Wedgwood Darwin, who came from a family of abolitionists. It might have been his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, a poet who once wrote, quote, "Go, proud reasoner, and call the worm thy sister," end quote. Might it have been the Aborigines Protection Society, or maybe even the Bible? We do know that Darwin planned to be a priest, after all. Or probably it was all of the above. We will never know for sure, yet we know there were influences to influence him, and it's really a lost history because we tell that story badly. No, great ideas and great actions aren't the sole purview of the rich, the powerful, or the famous. The world and the future belong to all of us. All of us related as we are, as Darwin told us, to everything else from marmosets to magnolia trees. Darwin's dangerous idea eventually, in our own time, did the one blood thing of the Aborigines Protection Society one better. We are all one DNA. As Darwin said, as soon as you realize that one species could evolve from another, the whole structure wobbles and collapses. The whole structure wobbles and collapses, meaning religion, nation, hierarchy, patriarchy, meritocracy, racism, speciesism, and on. If we listen, the theory of natural selection calls us back to seeing living things as two-leggeds and four-leggeds. Calls us back to see the match between the nature of the universe and the nature of our own nature, as Marcus Aurelius put it. It calls us home to knowing these things. As Atwood said in the poem, all bread is made of wood, cow dung, packed brown moss, the bodies of dead animals, the teeth and backbones, what is left after the ravens. This dirt flows through the stems into the grain, into the arm. Darwin's dangerous idea is dangerous because it calls us back and calls us home to relationship with all things. That is the call, I think, that can save us yet. See it, know it, and we become at home in the universe. Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.